Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. On today's podcast, we've got an interview with Ninja Alistair McCall. So welcome, Alistair. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad, thanks, John. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. This is a standard thing. I mentioned this in the last couple of podcasts. I always do this. I have a little chat with people first. I ask them how they're doing, and then I start podcasting and ask them the same question again. But yeah, we might come back to some of the things we spoke about over the last few minutes over the course of the next however many minutes. So for those that don't know you, Alistair, I think if you're a member at Rise, people probably do know who you are because whilst we're in club, you're quite a noticeable character, I think. And then whilst we're online, you're very active in the group and all that, which is awesome. But for anyone perhaps that hasn't noticed who you are or isn't a member, doesn't really know much about what we do, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, I'm quite hard to miss. I'm a bit of a loudmouth generally. So my name's Al, and like John said, I've been a member of Rise for just over a year now. I joined in January 2019. 2020.
2020, yeah.
I've tried to erase that year from my
Wishful
life.
Thinking.
No, I'm joking. So yeah, I live in Macclesfield with my wife, with 2 kids, and now with a dog that we bought during lockdown, which is a cliche, but there you go. Yeah, I've got a fairly checkered history. I started life as an opera singer, believe it or not, which is one of those things that I always tell people, and it gets that reaction. Oh, yeah.
Well, I presume no one's surprised because the second you hear you talk, you've got a very clear voice that projects really well. So whilst it's interesting, I wasn't remotely surprised to hear that you've been an opera singer.
Yeah, it's that was how I trained. I mean, I went through school and I always really enjoyed drama and being on stage and showing off basically, and singing as well. I was an angelic little choir boy on the front of the local paper once. So singing and acting and just playing around was always a big thing to me. And yeah, so I went off and studied opera, and it was one of those weird kind of things really, because I found myself doing it having never really watched any opera, or it wasn't something that was a sort of passion that became that's why I followed it. I followed it because it was challenging, if I'm honest. So I had a singing teacher, and she I wanted to sing. I was in a rock band at the time, and I wanted to do that, and I wanted to sing in musicals and stuff like that. And then my singing teacher just said, look, do you want to give some classical stuff a go? And I went, yeah, go on then. And I found it a real challenge, and I thought, oh, that was fun, and started to sort of explore the sort of extremities of your voice, if you like. So you start going, hang on, I can push this at this end, and I can push it here, and that was how I got into it really. So it wasn't something that was a massive passion. It was something that I sort of fell into, but I enjoyed the kind of the process of building a voice, which is what you kind of do when you get into kind of training it seriously. So yeah, so I was an opera singer for a little while, and that led me down a certain road, and I went into different countries and got to sing and do all sorts of exciting things. And then I had kids and had to grow up a little bit, and at that point I was doing a fair bit of teaching. So I was teaching at Fallowbroom and at King's in Macclesfield, funnily enough. And that was kind of what brought us to Macclesfield, because I said, oh, it's a nice place. It seems nice. And so that's what brought us over here. And then I sort of started to realise that is that Charlie in the background there?
No, that's Jamie trying to sneak in and do some of his homeschooling stuff. But sneaking and Jamie don't really go together.
Sneaking. He needs to get better at sneaking, doesn't he? Yeah. So yeah, the opera singing kind of stopped, and I decided I didn't want to just sit in a room teaching people singing for the rest of my life. So I actually did an Open University degree in psychology, and with a view to thinking, well, how can I sort of take what I've learned from being on stage and be, do something different with it. And I decided to take a psychology degree to kind of get into a bit more about how people think and how they behave and why they do certain things. And I'm now I'm the content director at an events agency. So I work with a load of corporate clients on how to bring their messages to life. So when they put on a conference or an event or, you know, something like that, or a film or a video or whatever, then I'll kind of work with their speakers to say, this is what you want to say, you know, here's some creative ideas of how to say it, and then I'll work with them to deliver it in the right way. So it's not that far removed, you know, I'm still using all those things I learned from being on stage and stuff, and you know, and bring the psychology into it. So yeah, I'm at an interesting place in my life, really, because I've gone from being a singer to suddenly working with all these corporate clients, and I don't really know what I'm doing, but I kind of get away with it.
Well, I should imagine, like a lot of people I know in the fitness industry, you get this imposter syndrome, I think some people call it. You feel that perhaps you don't know as much as some other people, and maybe one day you're going to get found out. But ultimately, you always know more than the people you're helping, and that's the important thing. Like, whilst I fully appreciate that people in the fitness industry who know a lot more than I do about certain aspects, I know more than enough for the average person that's coming to me, and same with you and your events and stuff like that. There may be people that know specific elements of that to a greater degree, but the people coming to you for your support in that, you know more than enough to get them to improve at that, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, a lot of these people that I work with, they're brilliant at what they do. They're not that good at explaining how they do it and what they want and their vision, and you know, that's where a bit of creativity comes in, and that's kind of why I've ended up doing it, and I love it. I get to work with some really cool clients. You know, I generally sort of write scripts, and at the moment I kind of direct videos and things like that. But you know, when we're back into live events, it'll be back into conference rooms and working with people to present a bit more effectively, present with a bit of impact and stuff.
How have you and your clients found the adaptation to doing things mainly online?
I have been really lucky with the agency that I work for. We're a what they call a full service agency, which means we've got a lot of skills in house. So we've got our own film team, which when we were in the live environment, our film team were in charge of kind of, you know, when a speaker said, oh, actually we could do with a little video to play during the conference about this sort of thing, our film team would make it. And those guys have really stepped up into actually taking that and owning it, and you know, and we've done some fantastic things through video that we might have done live. So those guys have stepped up, and I've worked really closely with them, which is great to see. You know, see them kind of really utilizing their skills in different ways. We've got people who we do a lot of exhibition work, for instance, and we've got 3D designers who'll design a 3D space and kind of everything that goes in it. Basically, it's making sure something fits before we go and build it. And those guys have turned their hand to building environments in 3D and making them kind of virtual worlds and stuff. So it's been one of those things from a professional point of view. It's been super exciting to kind of see how the world's going to develop and think, actually, we can use that, we can do that, and we can take that forward. One of my big things in designing events and things that we're doing is trying to make sure that we always do something that we couldn't do live, rather than just going with we're sort of doing the next best thing. I always kind of think, what can we do that we would never be able to do live? You know, and I've kind of it's a little bit like we're doing at Rise to a point, because you know, one of the things I've been really passionate about is democratizing these sorts of events. You know, a lot of the time, the events that I run, they say, oh, we're going to have our top 200 managers, or we're going to have our whatever. And actually, when you do them virtually, you can put everything online, you can make it on demand, and you can say, actually, anyone can access that, right? You know, you could be the trolley boy at a supermarket, but if you care enough and we want to be part of this community, then come on in and you can watch all the things online. You can really skill yourself up, you know, and I think that is really, really key. And, you know, it's kind of like what you're doing at Rise and saying, actually, you don't need to live in a local area to get something out of what we do, because we've got an ability to do something for everybody. So
I was very flattered about whatever it was, maybe 9 months ago. No, we were back in person actually. So let's say it must have been July. You said that you'd been impressed with the speed in which we'd adapted to the changes compared to some of your clients who perhaps had initially just thought they'd see this out and wait till things returned to normal, but then at that point were perhaps starting to realise they needed to do things a bit differently.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that, you know, a lot of people in the corporate world, I don't think really realised how long this was going to go on for, and I suspect that's probably the case for a lot of people. You know, you put out a lot of blogs saying, you know, don't wait until it's finished, because who knows how long this is going to be. You know, and some of our most kind of forward thinking, like, let's crack on, roll our sleeves up and get on with it clients came to us and went, what can we do? Whereas others, when we can't do anything, so we're going to do nothing. And that was really frustrating, because then they came to us later in the year and went, we haven't communicated with our business for this long. And you think, well, we've given you the ability to do it. You know, we can help you do it. And so, yeah, I think the fact that there didn't really seem to be a transition with Rise, or the Academy as it was then. You know, it was. I seem to remember I was in the club one day and then I was online the next. I don't really remember there being a week of going, shit, I don't know what we're going to do. I think it was just like, right, well, this is what we do now. And you know, that's kind of how I wanted to work as well. It's just crack on, let's get on with it.
I think in retrospect, like, I've spoken to my wife at great length about kind of what we did over the last year, and I think the one thing I was most pleased that we did was just to almost treat it as a foregone conclusion. Like, this is what we're doing, let's take it this way. I know a lot of places that as soon as lockdown was announced, they just cancelled all their members' direct debits. And then a month later, we're like, oh, actually, I'm launching this online version. Do you want to come and get involved? And obviously, we had a number of people who decided they didn't want to continue online, and that was absolutely fine. But I wanted to make it, look, this is what we're doing. This is the next best thing. It's not quite the same, but let's just keep going. It's that whole slow down and speed up as circumstance dictates thing, rather than thinking we have to stop with a view to starting again in the future. And really, out of all the things we did over the last year, that kind of fundamental attitude underpinning it, I think, probably helped us and hopefully the members the most. So that's you quite a degree of information about kind of you on a professionally more level, but tell us about personal level. So just before we met you, from however you want to look at it, from a weight perspective, from wherever you felt you were at and all that, tell us about Alistair then.
All right, so I do think the reason I've kind of gone into that much level of detail is because I think when I sort of told the story of the journey I've had over the last year, I think it's important because, so where was I? So January last year, it was the Christmas. I mean, it was one of those classic Christmas things, right? And I know that a lot of gyms and health clubs and stuff get a lot of boost in January because everyone feels crap after Christmas. But I felt, you know, so I was 19 and a half stone. I was huge. And I've always kind of gone, I'm a big guy, right? I've always been one of the biggest guys in the room, and I'm still a big guy. There's no getting away from that. I'm built in quite a large way, but you know, I'd used it as an excuse. And I think looking back over my childhood, I was always quite fat. I'd always kind of been the fat kid. And you know, I remember I can remember on my wedding day, I remember my brother saying to me about the best man speech. I had two best men, and he said their speech was basically 20 minutes of fat jokes, you know. And like I can remember one of them was, you know, we were all really surprised when he got down on one knee, and we were even more surprised when he could get back up again, you know. And it was all fun and games, and I laughed it off, and I sort of joined in, and that's, you know, that's who I was. And I remember I'm in a really sort of close-knit group of mates, and one of them at one point got a little bit large, and then he lost quite a bit of weight, and he was like, well, I'm the thick one, aren't I? He went, but I'm not going to be the fat one. And I was like, you're right, okay, you know. So it was one of those things. I was the fat one, he was the thick one, you know. Somebody else was the non-commitment one, you know. It's like you can write a sitcom. So yeah, I'd always been a bit chubby as a lad, you know, not that big, you know. It wasn't like, you know, one of those sort of like stories you see from the States or anything. I was just a very big guy. And we went out for my parents' 70th birthday party, and we took a picture of my family, so my parents, my two brothers, and me on the end at Marylebone Station on our way home. And we just had a gourmet meal. So, you know, you're always going to look a little bit bloated. But I looked at this photo and I thought, this is getting ridiculous now. It's getting silly. So that will have been in the sort of September, October, and then that Christmas, I think I just got to a point, and it was just a bit of a switch that went off in my head that went, you got to do something about this. And a big thing for me was, you know, I've got 2 kids, and they're pretty active kids, and I just thought, if I don't get active with them now, I never will. And my worry was that if they're the kids of a fat dad, you know, if they've not got that sort of inspiration, then I'm really not setting them up to set an example to them, if you know what I mean. Like my dad, I remember my dad when I was about 11, I think, 11 or 12, my dad ran the marathon. And I can remember that absolutely clear. I remember him going out and training. I remember going out on my bike with him while he trained. And, you know, at the time I didn't really care, but now I look back at it, that was a really good example to set of, you don't, you know, you can be fit, you should take your health seriously. I didn't listen at the time, but who listens to their parents when they're 11 and 12 and stuff, you know? But that obviously went in as an example to me. And I thought, it's about time I step up and become a bit of an example to those 2, you know. And my littlest plays rugby. I'm a big rugby fan, and my littlest got into rugby tots, and I thought, oh, you know, it'd be great to take him down the rugby club. And then I thought, but I wouldn't be able to join in. I'd be able to stand on the sidelines and shout, but I wouldn't be able, you know, if they said, oh, can you referee, there's no way I'd have been able to run around with a bunch of 10-year-olds, you know, when he gets there for however long. It just wasn't a thing. So I just thought, it's time to do something about it. And you know, it sort of links into the professional point of view. I was really unhappy professionally. I'd got to a point where the singing had kind of stopped, and I was sitting in teaching rooms, just teaching, you know, person after person. There's nothing wrong with doing that at all, but I wasn't really enjoying it. I was a bit miserable, and I did something about it, and I changed my life in that way. And I thought, well, there's no reason why I can't do that here. There's no reason why I can't change my life in that respect. So, but I thought I need to do something that's, I don't know, feels a bit bigger than join a gym, right? So, and I've told you this story before. I knew about Rise. I knew about, you know, like I say, I'd been in the club before, funnily enough, because we actually rehearsed a show in Rise when you first opened, I think.
Yeah, not long after.
You just opened, and I knew the landlord, and we were rehearsing a show, and she went, oh, there's this space that you can use. And we went in and rehearsed, and I think, you know, you probably got a discount on the rent or something, didn't you?
I did not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's fine. She just asked if we could use it, and I was like, of course you can, that's fine.
But I remember walking in and going, oh, it seems quite serious in here. There were ropes on the wall, and you know, there were some serious weights, and I was like, oh, this seems like an interesting place. And the landlord said to me, oh, you know, yeah, it's quite. I think she came down for a couple of sessions. She went, oh yeah, it's quite serious. You know, they really sort of get you going. And I was like, oh right, okay. So I knew about it, but that must have been, well. How long have you been open?
I think, well, we opened in 2012. I think that was probably 2013. I think that would have been.
Okay, so I did nothing with it for 6 years. And then, yeah, I just thought I'll go down, you know, to one of the sessions, and, you know, one of the find out more sessions, and kind of have a listen and see what I think. And yeah, that was it really. That was the turning point really.
What sort of things had you tried in the past?
Oh, I've got more gym membership cards than you've had hot dinners, John. I've joined cheap gyms because I don't want to spend too much on it. I've joined really expensive gyms because, you know, if it's nicer, I'll go more. I've tried, I'm going to go swimming because swimming's really good exercise. And, you know, I've got problems with my joints, so I need to make sure that I do something really low impact. And, you know, and like, it's one of those, but it's an excuse, isn't it? You know, I need to do low impact because otherwise I get sore joints. Well, yeah, but there's things you can do. And I thought it was really, you put a blog up not long ago about the lady who lost like a record amount of weight, and the only thing she could do on her first session was clap along, you know. And I thought, yeah, fair enough. And that's kind of what I felt like on my first session at Rise. But yeah, I'd just done a lot of joining gyms and thinking I knew. I think, I did a fair bit, well, not a fair bit, I did a bit of lifting weights when I was a kid and sort of 16, 17, doing a bit of lifting weights. And I thought, I know what to do. I know what to do. I just, so I just need to join a gym and then I can go and do it. And, I'd had a little bit of PT before, and that was great until the sessions ran out. You go, right, like, I'll join this gym, and as part of it, I'll get 5 PT sessions. And I've had those 5 PT sessions, got on brilliantly with the PT, absolutely no problem with the PT at all. But then I don't do any more than that. And then, I think, oh, well, they've given me a few workouts, so I'll do them for a bit. And it just gets boring, doesn't it? So, yeah, it's, I had tried all those things. I tried running, but in all seriousness, I was a bit too heavy to run. So every time I started running, I would end up really sore, and not be able to walk, and then think, right, well, I can't do that then, can I? So yeah, I tried a lot of things, but not everything. I hadn't tried that hard.
So you came down to the meeting, you decided to get involved. Looking back in retrospect, the timing, I don't want to say wasn't ideal. Maybe it was in some ways, but obviously you only managed a couple of months before we went into lockdown. But tell us about that first couple of months as a member.
The first couple of months were interesting for me because I said to you on the Find Out More meeting, and again, this was probably trying to make excuses. I had an event. So this time last year, John, I was out in LA with a luxury car manufacturer based in Cheshire. So I'm not going to say who it is, but if you only have to do a bit of Googling, they're a luxury car manufacturer based in Cheshire. And I was doing their company conference to all their retailers out in LA. And we were meant to be flying to Singapore, and that got cancelled quite early on in 2020, believe it or not. So we were meant to do Singapore and then LA and then Munich. So it was going to be about 12 days out of my first 2 months. And I came to you and I said, oh, I've got this and I'm just not sure. And you went, well, make a decision, basically. Like, you either join now or you could wait until then, and, like, up to you. And I thought, actually, if I don't join now, and I remember there was a lady that I knew who became a member, and I don't think she's a member anymore, but she was like, just do it. She said, you just need to do it because otherwise you won't. And if you do it, I'll do it. And I was like, okay, fine. So, that first couple of months was interesting because it was actually 6 weeks, because I did my first 6 weeks and then I went on this trip, and then I had my weigh-in to see if I'd lost my 20 pounds at the end of that trip. And I remember being on that trip and thinking, I'm not going to do this, because I weighed in just before it. I remember I came down and Bernie and Faye were in the club. They were like, and I said, oh, could I weigh in? Because I want to see if I've lost this 20 pounds, see if I've completed that challenge. Because I was 19.5 stone, John. So that first 20 pounds comes off relatively easily, right? And I was out on this trip in LA, and we were eating the most amazing food, because it was a luxury client. We were eating brilliant food, we were drinking, and I was thinking, oh God, I'm not sure how this is going to go. I'd weighed in just before, and I was still about 5 pounds off the pace. And I thought, oh, I think I've lost it, but that's okay. I can keep going when I get back. Anyway, when I got back, turned out I'd lost the 20 pounds. And I remember at that weigh-in, I remember Faye did my weigh-in, and she weighed me, and I was stood there thinking, oh God, this is like, I'm not going to have done it. And that means I've done this 2 months where I could have had it free if I'd worked a bit harder. And she went, you've done it. And I remember going, but how have I done it? Because I've been away, I've been eating and I've been drinking. And she went, yeah, but you're in different habits. And I was like, yeah. And it just made me think, what have I been doing? I've been, we'd have buffets full of food. And in the past, I'd have probably just been back 3, 4, 5 times, just loading it up. And I was kind of in that mindset of going, it's great food. None of it's off limits. Let's just go in and have a plate of food. And and there'll be people listening to this going, duh, yeah. But, I was of the mindset before all this that if food was available, I had to eat it. It was like, and I think one of the things that first 2 months really struck home to me was, hang on a minute, I can eat what I like, really, within reason, obviously, but and I can eat what I like, I can drink what I like. I've just got to change my mindset a little bit from I can have as much of this as I want, who cares, to you can have some of that and that's cool, but maybe try and balance it out with something with some of this stuff. And like I realized when I started using my fitness pal in the first couple of months, I remember like tapping into I ate really well that day, because you do, don't you, on my when you first use my fitness pal, you like you have a few slices of cucumber and but I ate really well for a couple of days and I tapped it all in and I went, and that was the other thing, I was 19.5 stone, which meant my like maintain weight was something like 3,500 calories a day. So I was really fortunate, but I could keep my midweek calories to about 1,500, and that meant I had a load more in the bank for the weekend.
Loads for the weekend, then, haven't you?
Yeah, and it was one of those where that was a total switch for me of going, so hang on, I just need to be good some of the time / most of the time, because my working week is 5 days. I've got 2 days at the weekend where I like to have a beer, I like to have a takeaway, I like to, and you're saying I don't have to stop that. And I think that was the difference. I think my mentality had been, it's either all or nothing. Yeah. It's either, you're either eating salad or you're eating burgers, not you're eating salad some of the time, burgers some of the time, and I think that it's one of those things that when you say it out loud, you go, how didn't you know this? But it was just that first couple of months was a big sort of realization to me that I could live my life the way that I wanted to live it and not and still be fit and healthy and lose weight. And then lockdown happened.
I think you've in that there you've hit a number of kind of things that underpin a lot of people's struggles on the head there. I think firstly there's the whole almost like not wanting to waste food. I think we're a generation that were brought up, our parents were brought up in the shadow of the war where food was scarce and we were told not to waste it. And then the way they bring up their kids, us, we've got starving Ethiopians on TV and our parents are saying, you need to finish that, some Ethiopian kid would love it. And the whole idea of wasting food. I remember my granny, waste not, want not. She said that all the time. That was one of her big sayings. And the idea of leaving food, even if actually it wasn't going to go to waste, is something that was kind of drilled into us that wasn't okay. And then we can make that work for a while. And all of a sudden, 20, 30 years later, you realize that that food that you could have left or almost not even chosen in the first place has added up to quite a surplus over the years. And I know people who've done similar, like buffets, things like that, all-inclusive holidays. I know a lot of people struggle with them. I remember when we first opened the club, one guy who joined, who I knew anyway outside of the club, and he went to one holiday. It was 1 week, all-inclusive, and he came back and he'd gained 15 pounds. 15 pounds in a week. If it is all body fat, which realistically it won't be, but let's say it's all body fat, that's a 7,000 calorie a day surplus. And he was a big guy, so his maintenance was probably 3,500, 4,000. So he was probably doing 10, 11,000 calories plus per day. And I just, as I do, questioned the whole, just because it's all inclusive, does that mean you have to do it to that degree? And he just kept saying, well, it was all inclusive. And I was like, well, I know it was all inclusive. I get that. I said, but it was all inclusive. And his head was just in a position where all inclusive meant you had to get to your money's worth. You had to eat absolutely everything, drink absolutely everything. And the irony with that is, if I said to him, if I paid you £10 a day to gain weight and have a body you like the look and feel of less, would you take it? You'd go, well, no, that's not worth it. Yet we'd do it to get slightly better value out of money we've already spent. But we just get into those habits, we get into those thought processes. And like you said, when you question them and kind of move past them, it does seem really obvious. But I think often as well, it's just because kind of not everyone else, but a fairly high proportion of the people we associate with and society are doing it. So it just seems normal. We don't question it.
I think like it's interesting you say about our childhoods. I remember I was rewarded for eating fast and eating a lot.
Yeah.
Like, because my brother, so I'm one of 3 brothers. I'm the youngest. So I've got 2 older brothers, and when people see us side by side, they're like, "You're not brothers." You know, we kind of look the same. And I look, funnily enough, more people have said that we look alike now that I've lost some weight, which is quite interesting, because they're built more like you. They're not as muscular as you, but they're sort of much more slight than I am. And my middle brother was a bad eater. You know, I remember my mum used to battle him to, you know, you eat more of that, eat more of that. And I think to sort of get him to eat, she'd pat me on the head for eating a lot,
right,
or eating quickly, you know, or just eating what was hoovering up what was in front of me. And I'm, you know, it's one of those things. I'm not blaming that. You know, that sounds like it's sort of an excuse.
It's a fact.
It's one of those. Yeah, it's one of those things that happens. You know, that I had this sort of idea that eating was a really good. You know, he's a good eater, isn't he? You know, a lot of people.
Good eater.
And you know what? You still get that from sort of probably the older generation. When if I turn up at someone's house and there's like a, you know, their mum, or they'll say to me, "Oh, you know, let's feed you up a bit." It's like, really? You know, it's something that's still kind of, it's in that mindset of you're a good eater, and that's
I find it hard as well not to replicate parts of that with your own kids. So sometimes my kids, they'll be leaving some of the main course and then wanting a pudding, and part of me feels like saying, well, no, you've got to finish your main course to get a pudding. But I think that then feeds into this whole idea that the main course is this boring thing that you have to have, and you've just got to get through it to get to the good stuff, which is the pudding. And I've not quite mastered how to get that kind of eating the food that's in front of you already, perhaps because you don't want to waste it, without then incentivizing it with use of a pudding. And there's nothing wrong with puddings, but it's just getting that balance. And it is difficult, isn't it? Just rewinding to one thing you mentioned there, actually, about your brothers, that's interesting. While we were back in the club, so let's say last August or September, I exported all the information we've got on the InBody machine, which for those that don't know is the super mega fancy scales we've got that measure not just obvious things like weight, but body fat percentage, body fat distribution, visceral fat, which is what's between your organs, lots of other measures. And kind of cross-referenced it. I like doing stuff in Excel. I put various different columns in to work out different things. And a couple of things.
I'm going to quote Jamie Sinclair here, that the nights must fly by in the Hall House.
Well, Alex loves Excel as well. We've got it in common. It's great. Well, frankly, I don't understand why anyone doesn't love Excel, but that's a different point. But one thing I worked out, well, I'll come to the second thing that's relevant to you in a minute. One thing I worked out was kind of proportions of fat to muscle. So for, let's say, and most people have, let's say, approximately the same amount of fat and muscle. Some might have 50% more of one, 50% more of the other, etc. But there was two numbers that absolutely jumped out from the InBody, and I knew one was mine, because I was super lean at that point. I had 17 times more muscle than fat. The next one was about 9 times more muscle than fat. And the second I saw it, I knew exactly who it was. The references on the machine are just numbers. And this number just said 555. It wasn't a phone number, it just said 555. So I texted Faye and said, I presume your reference number on the InBody is 555. And she texted back and said, yeah, how did you know? Because it was quite obvious a female of about that age with that ratio of fat to muscle was clearly going to be her. But the bit that would be of interest to you is, speaking of Jamie Sinclair, I was messaging Jamie and Lee a couple of those things, because I thought they'd be interested to see where they essentially kind of ranked in terms of their progression. And they asked me about the lean mass thing, and I came in about 10th highest lean mass and muscle mass out of everyone that's essentially ever used that machine. So members and staff that have ever used it. And then they were surprised about that. They assumed I would have the highest lean mass. But do you know who has the highest muscle mass out of anyone that's used that machine?
Well, I'm not going to say me.
It's you. It's you.
Me?
It's you.
Is it?
It is. Because like you said, you're a big guy. You've got a big frame. You do have a lot of muscle and a lot of actual size to you. You had the most lean mass. And I mean, I'm just looking at you now. I can see you on Zoom. You've clearly got broader shoulders than I have. You know, there's none of that width there that's body fat, is there? You know, you're not going to get any narrow if you lose more weight. You are a big guy.
It's all in one place, John. It's all on my front.
Yeah. So I thought that was quite interesting. I probably should have shared that with you at the time.
That is interesting. I'm the muscliest member you've ever had.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if is muscliest pushing it. You've got highest muscle levels.
I think we can call it the muscliest member that Rise have ever had.
Let's call it that.
Should we say that? I mean,
let's.
I'm just wanting to put it in my promotional material.
Put it on a T-shirt or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to, I'm going to go on the Facebook group and tell everyone. No, I'm not. That's really interesting. And the other thing that I realised, and it does, Faye and I had a conversation about this recently, because one of the things I wanted to focus on in this, what I'm calling second lockdown, but it's technically third lockdown, but this section that we're in now, so we're in February in 2021, so we're hopefully in our last lockdown if the roadmap will work, but one of the things I wanted to focus on in this one was putting on more muscle mass, because I thought the first lockdown I lost quite a lot of weight. And it was for me, that first weigh-in after first lockdown was a real positive mental moment for me, where I went, I've done something useful with that time, because I really did engage with the online sessions. I remember I had so much fun in Bernie's sessions, with her sort of disco dancing and everything. And I feel like Jen's actually taken that role in this lockdown. She's having fun in the mornings. And like Irvin's sessions, I remember sweating onto my kitchen floor doing shadow boxing. It was hot, wasn't it, in that first lockdown? So I lost quite a lot of weight, but also because we were doing so much body weight exercise, I put on quite a bit of muscle. And I remember my line went up on the muscle, and I was like, that's really cool. And it made me realize, and Faye and I had a chat about this, that the more muscle you've got, the more calories you can eat and still lose weight. And Faye and I have got this thing where I say to her, I'm a fat man at heart, and like I'll never lose that. Like, I love food, I love dirty food as well. I love burgers and takeaways and all that sort of stuff. I'm learning a lot more as we go along, but like I'll never lose that. I don't think I'll ever become one of that. I'm not going to be an ex-smoker, who becomes like the most anti-smoking person ever. But Faye and I were talking about, if we build more muscle mass, we have to have more calories, and that's, so I've been sort of upping my protein levels, and goes back to the point I was making about trying to do stuff that you can't do in club or in live experience. So after each session, I'm trying to do a little bit more muscle building exercise. So I just sort of think, if the session's 40 minutes long, if I do another 10 minutes, it's not that big a deal in terms of my day. I'm already in my kit. I'm already warmed up and sweaty. So I'm trying to do an extra 10, 15 minutes a day. And I've seen quite a lot of muscle mass go on, which is brilliant. I'm not sure that much fat's come off, if I'm honest. So I'm going to be interested to see what happens when I get on that machine again in 4 weeks, 5 weeks?
7.
7 weeks.
7, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, that's all right. That means I've got time to try and focus on some fat reduction as well as muscle mass building. But I do feel like I've built a bit this time, which is brilliant. And I think the big thing for me that I've learned this year is I've learned to understand my body a bit more. And I think that's a key thing that people coming in need to take from the experience, because like you say, putting yourself on that machine that gives you all those figures and everything, a lot of people will focus on one of those figures, whatever the most important figure is to them. So if you're coming to lose weight, they'll look at it and they'll go, right, I've lost this much weight. But actually, if you read deeply into it, and if you work with you guys to sort of delve into those figures a bit deeper, I remember I did one weigh-in where I was a little bit disappointed, and I thought, oh, actually, and I kind of came out the club feeling a bit like, nah. And then I went home and really looked at it, and I thought, actually, I've done all right here, because I've put on a bit of muscle mass. I've still lost a little bit. So actually, in terms of fat, I've probably lost more than I thought. And that's why just having a set of bathroom scales doesn't work, or it can work, but I think it's learning to understand the directions that your body's going in. So like you say, I know I'm a muscly person, so let's build that as well as trying to lose weight. And I think it's just the understanding of what your body can do and what you're capable of, and just trying to push yourself a little bit, you know. So like I'm a year in and I'm only just at the point where I'm starting to put some proper like off the feet press ups into my workouts, because I just went, I'm not gonna try and do something that I can't do. So I've been, this whole year, all my press ups have been off my knees. Now I'd say probably 10% of them are off my toes, and I'm good with that. I'm happy with that, because you know, I think it's really easy when you first join a club like Rise, look at other members and think, oh, they're doing this or they're doing that, and you've got to realise that everyone's on a different part of the journey to you. And it's really interesting, you know, so when I first joined, I was part of the 6 a.m. club, and it's really interesting the differences between the sort of mindsets of those different groups. When we went into the first lockdown, I moved to the 7 a.m. club, and the 7 a.m. club is populated by a slightly different demographic of people. And they're all absolutely lovely, but like they're nowhere near as muscly as I am. Right? They're a lot. There's you know, a lot of ladies in that group, and they're nowhere near as muscly as I am. But some of their fitness levels are unreal. Yeah. And if I was trying to, you start to realise that why on earth would I compare myself to somebody else? Because you know, when you see another guy in the gym, you try and look over and think, let's try and do the same as him. But that's as ridiculous as comparing myself to one of the ladies in the 7 a.m. class who, you know, they wouldn't ever be able to lift the kettlebells that I can lift, but boy, can they burpee till, you know, it sounds ridiculous, but I think one of the things was realizing that, and in that community, you learn it quite quickly, that nobody's a threat and nobody's a challenge to, well, they are a challenge, but in the right way. And it's just, everyone wants you to develop in your way. And I think that was one of the big things that came out of lockdown. And what's interesting for me is, sorry, I know I'm doing a lot of talking here, John.
That's good. Good.
What's interesting for me is in that first lockdown, I was on Facebook exclusively. I didn't feel like I knew everyone well enough to be on Zoom. And I don't know, there was something about it. And I stayed on Facebook. And in the second and third lockdowns, I've only been on Zoom because I feel much more part of the gang, part of the community. And I also feel like I can bring something to the party, you know. So at 6 a.m, I try and go, hello, everyone, because I feel like at 6 a.m, everyone probably needs a little, hello, everyone, rather than, you know. And so I feel like as you progress through the experience, you start to move from being somebody who needs a bit of motivation from the community to somebody who's a bit more of a motivator of the community. And then there'll be times, I guess, when you slip back into the other, you know, and you swing around. And I think the community aspect of it has been pretty massive for me. You know, the Facebook group and having a laugh on there, and like I've slung a couple of videos on there of me doing silly things, and I think that's a big thing to me is kind of having some accountability to the other guys in the group, and you know, sharing success and kind of shrugging your shoulders at a bit of failure and going, right, come on, pick yourself up and let's crack on.
I've spent the last couple of minutes there nodding away because you've dropped several, for want of a better expression, like knowledge bombs there. Before I explore them a little bit further, what I really like is over the course of the last half hour, you've gone from referring to yourself as a big guy to muscly. You've said that several times in the last minutes. That's good.
For those of you who missed it, I'm the muscliest member that Rise has ever had.
So a couple of things that you mentioned there. Firstly, you mentioned about kind of getting involved, getting stuck in and contributing and being part of the group. I've actually, just before we got on this podcast, I'm writing some of next week's blogs, and I'm talking about the ABC, or the CBA, as I put it, of motivation, which is competence, feeling that you are good at something, or at least that you're improving in it, and you'll get there with practice. And the B there is belonging, feeling that you're part of something, feeling that you're contributing to something that maybe where the sum is greater, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's what I really like to get people doing, get people involved to some capacity. They don't necessarily need to be as outgoing and perhaps vocal as you are, but but feeling that they're getting involved is huge. You mentioned about the potential benefits of gaining muscle in terms of allowing you more calories per day. But what you said there, which is absolutely spot on, is still looking more at still concentrating on the food side of that, around that, because that's one thing that I find often gets massively over exaggerated in the fitness industry. People talk about, do these exercises and train this way because you'll turn yourself into a fat burning machine, because you'll gain lean mass and you'll create this afterburn effect. And whilst it's true that by gaining lean mass, your calories will increase, it's not by a massive amount. It doesn't mean that you can then have an extra pizza. It might mean you can have a little bit more, maybe. And actually, overall, it's quite an inefficient process. There's a lot of effort has to go into creating extra lean mass for that reason, for the benefit. If you're doing it like you are, as partly that reason, but partly how you look and how you feel and all that makes much more sense. And as I covered in the recent podcast with Steve, that afterburn effect, again, massively over exaggerated. Even there's a session designed to produce the maximum increased calorie burn after the workout might only burn something like 80 or 100 calories extra over the course of the next few days, which is it's not even. It's not even. It's a bonus, and it's if you're doing it for other reasons as well, it's fine. But if someone thinks that by doing some fitness facilities special program that they'll turn into a fat burning machine because of all the muscle that they've gained and this afterburn effect, and they can therefore eat what they like, they're probably going to be disappointed. You also mentioned as well about things like press-ups as well, and what you've done there is absolutely spot on. You've done the version, I think you used the term only doing proper press-ups recently. Any press-up's a proper press-up. You were doing the version of it that worked for you, and you've progressed now up to doing a proportion on your toes. And what you've done, which I love, is you've filled that almost potentially difficult gap in between, because people sometimes look at a press-up on the toes, chest down to floor, and think, I can't do that, and can't almost envisage how they'd fill that gap between can't do that and doing it. What you've done is the version that you can do, built up that, and then you've gone for 10% on the next version of it, and then it might be in a month or two or what have you, you're doing 20% and then 80%, and then eventually 50%, and eventually you're just banging out those press-ups on the toes, which is awesome. I literally spent the last 5 minutes just nodding and trying to remember all those things you were saying.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like the old mental health thing, isn't it? Struggling is okay. It doesn't mean you fail. I think in the past, I think I've been, and this is probably an age thing as well, I've been a bit too macho about trying to do anything physical, and I think I'm at a point in my life where I kind of think I don't care anymore. I don't really care what other people, because I'm not doing it. I think it comes back to what you said right at the beginning. Why did you do it? I did it because I want to be a better dad, and I want to be a better, I'm doing it for the kids, and the kids don't even I go off to a place, or I go into a room and I do something and I come out and I'm a bit happier. That's what they see at the moment. So they don't see it happening, but they do see the benefits. And I think that's the difference. I'm not doing it for any other reason except I just want to be healthier and fitter and live longer. And, COVID was one of the things that came along, and actually it made me go, hang on, this thing. And at the time it was like, it adversely affects overweight people and bald men. It came out really early. Oh. So I was like, oh my goodness. So, that was a bit of a motivator for me, was I was a little bit like, ooh, not sure, and I've my mindset probably moved a little bit with the danger of getting COVID. I haven't had it, and I've been really lucky in that way, but part of me at the beginning was like, I do not want to get this. And I think I'm probably at the point where I think, well, if I did get it, I'm in a lot better place to fight it off than I would have been a year ago. And that's a big thing. So yeah, I think it's one of those, you can look across the club and see someone doing press-ups off their toes and think, why aren't I doing press-ups off your toes? Or you can think, well, hang on, I wasn't doing any press-ups a year ago. So I just, it's a mindset thing really, that I've just sort of changed that view of why I'm doing it, I think.
So looking back, actually, earlier on, I mentioned that in some ways your timing perhaps wasn't ideal, joining the club not long before we went into lockdown, but maybe actually it was ideal. If that time you come to the briefing meeting, if you'd have gone off and decided to start in 2 months after you'd done the trip that you mentioned there, that in theory would have meant starting in March, which might have meant that you didn't. How do you think 2020 would have been different for you if you hadn't have started?
I was thinking about that because I thought, I bet he asked me that. I suspect, oh God, I don't know. I just think I'd have eaten my way through it. I really do. I really do, because I struggled mentally. I did struggle with the first lockdown a lot more than I've struggled with this one, to be totally honest, because I remember saying to you at the time, when we're doing our workouts, I like that person that shouts halfway there, 10 seconds to go. And this, that first lockdown was like, what is this? And how long is it going to go on for? And there was absolutely no information. And I really mentally struggled with that idea of, we've got no idea when the end of this is. And we still don't, to a certain extent, but I've kind of made a bit more peace with that. I think at the start of the whole thing, I really struggled with that idea. And my job was so varied and exciting. And, I'd just been out in LA, and then I was at home, and that was it. That was the only place I was allowed to go. And I did struggle mentally. So I think I'd have probably just gone for it with food and just, I shudder to think the size that I would probably be, because actually, funnily enough, I mentioned my brother earlier in the podcast. He's put on quite a bit of weight because he used to play. A large part of his exercise was golf. He walked miles doing golf, and he's just found that the golf course is shut. He sat at home. He went to the co-op, and there's a little box of cakes there, and he's just sort of snacked his way to a bit of weight gain.
Yeah.
Not massively, but his that's definitely what I'd have done. I'd have snacked my way through it, and I'd be an even bigger person. I'd still be the muscliest member,
of course. Yeah, that's a given.
Right. If I join.
I've got a similar-ish thing. I stopped drinking completely in late 2019 for a variety of reasons I've covered in various other videos and what have you. And I'm never saying I'm going to drink again. I've just kind of, in my head, by questioning it, I've got to the point actually where I've gone off it. I don't feel the need to anymore. Having spent 20 odd years, I would never say by any stretch of imagination did I have a problem, but I definitely drank at least the recommended allowance, if not more, nearly every week of that 20 years. And in retrospect, I'm so glad I stopped when I did, because if I'd still been drinking as I was prior to stopping, when lockdown and 2020 hit, I would have got even further in the I don't want to say wrong direction, but the non-ideal direction.
Yeah, I think drinking's an interesting one, and I've done something with that you might find interesting. I've made a sort of mental, conscious decision that I want to drink a bit less. I mean, I've never drunk loads, but I thought, actually, if I'm going to drink, I'm going to drink really nice stuff. So one of the things I've tried to do over lockdown is try and support some local businesses. And in Macclesfield, we've got an amazing tap and bottle room called R&G's Beer Vault. I'm going to give them a bit of a launch. Not sure they should really have a plug on a fitness website, but
that's fine. It's all good.
If you like, they are fantastic. They sell amazing beer from little breweries all around the country and all around the world. And I've been to see them, and it's quite expensive. It's an expensive way to buy beer, so I don't buy as much of it, and it means I really enjoy it when I drink it.
Savor it,
and I've kind of got into a bit more of that mindset, because it makes me happy that I'm supporting a local business, and a business that I want to still be here when this all finishes. And it means that I regulate myself a little bit more, because it's not like £10 for 24 of them. So, and it goes back to your buffet idea. I've got 24 beers in the fridge. Like, whoops, I've drunk 12 of them. I might as well drink another couple, and that's another thing that I've kind of got into, is if you're going to limit yourself to certain things, then increase the quality of the things that you do. So, increase the if you're going to get a takeaway, get a nice takeaway. You know, like we've got chili banana in Macclesfield. It's amazing food. I know you like chili banana. You know, amazing food, but quite expensive. But that's a bit of a trade-off for me of going, well, actually, I'm going to spend a bit more money when I do it and really enjoy it. And so I think that's just a bit of a mindset thing as well, which has helped me.
Interesting. They've mentioned about almost what some might consider the irony of referencing a place that sells alcohol on a fitnessy related podcast. I've had a couple of things that recently. I mentioned that blog I was writing before, and as part of that, I Googled to try and find a video I did a couple of years ago based on the intro to Cheers, the TV show, about the power of being everyone knows your name and they're always glad you came and all that. And I found a blog I'd written about it because I'd had a number of comments on that post basically saying the irony of a gym using a bar to promote their business. And the second thing I've had a bit of recently is during, I think it was late last year, Cake Face by James, which is a local cake making business, has sublet one of the rooms upstairs at Rise. And one that we don't use, it's like a separate part of the building. And I've had several people say, oh, that's not great that they're doing that. And in both cases, I'm like, well, I kind of think, well, that's what we talk about. It's fine to have beer, it's fine to go to a bar, it's fine to eat cake, as long as we make the overall balance of the day, the week, the month work. One next thing I did want to revisit there, you mentioned about your kids being aware that you go into your room where you go on Zoom twice, don't you? You have one Zoom for your eyes, for your ears.
So this is, I treated myself to some new Bose headphones. So I don't know why, but when I'm at home, I quite like having it in my ears. I don't know whether it's because I can hear it a bit clearer, and so I like having my headphones in. So I've got these Bose headphones, and they unfortunately only connect to my phone. Yeah. I like having the visual on my laptop, so I come in twice. You know,
it's all good. It's all good.
But why not?
Yeah, of course. So your kids are aware that you made these changes over the course of the last year. What has been like the impact of that? What have you found either you can do with them, or what have they said? Kind of what's happened there?
Oh, my little boy, every morning now, because I said I've been doing a bit of extra muscle building sort of exercise straight after the session, and every morning we've got into this thing where he goes, "Show me your muscles," and show him my muscles, and he goes, "Whoa, they're even bigger." You know, and that's a nice little ego boost, but that to me is, you know, it's sort of a bit of a funny dad son macho thing, but actually for me, I feel like I'm setting him an example, you know, and I feel like when he's older he'll go, oh yeah, my dad used to do that, you know, he used to like, and so there's that. But to be honest, one came through just last week. We wanted to go to the park and the kids wanted to take their bikes, and for a couple of reasons we couldn't get them in the car. And I was like, we're gonna have to cycle down there, and it's a little way. So I'm sort of up near Fallabroom High School, and we wanted to go to West Park. So you have to kind of go. There's a route you can go that doesn't take you on any main roads. You're sort of going through residential and stuff. But of course, you realise the kids ride bikes relatively fast. So I found myself essentially running to West Park to kind of keep up with them, make sure that they were safe, make sure that everything was okay. And my wife was behind me with the dog, so she was walking and I was kind of running along with the kids. And when we got to the park, I thought, I feel all right. You know, I feel like I know. And Gemma, my wife Gemma, said to me, "You're not even really sweating." And I was like, I know. It's things like that that make you just go, oh, you know, because when you're in a session, and this is the luxury car manufacturer that I talked about earlier. Their CEO has got this thing about if you're a cyclist, it's always hard. So you know, if you're a professional cyclist, it's hard because you're working at a different level. Yeah. So it doesn't matter where you are on the scale, you're always working hard. And I think that's the thing, you know. So you do the sessions and you don't really think about how hard you're working because it's always difficult. Yeah. And you know, it's not like I breeze through sessions that I found really hard like a while ago, because you just do them to a slightly harder difficulty. You know, it's like your Goldilocks exercise thing. But it's only moments like that when you run to the park where you go, do Jesus, there's no way I'd have done that a year ago. There's no, I'd have been in bits if I'd run to West Park a year ago. So little things like that again, the kids don't even really notice. They're not sitting there going, "Oh, Dad never would have been able to do that a year ago." They're just getting the benefits.
Yeah, they'll be aware. They'll know that being active and exercising and eating better, that's obviously on their radar a lot more than it will have been. And I think, again, hitting the nail on the head there, I think a lot of people, sometimes people after them come in a couple of months say, when are the sessions going to get easier? And I just say, well, never, essentially, because you'll just keep increasing the level of what you do. You don't want them to get easier. If they're getting easier, that means you're essentially working less hard. Now, you might have to do more to get that level. You might have to lift heavier weights, go longer, take shorter rests, do a harder version or whatever it is. But in essence, we want to keep it Goldilocks, not so hard that we don't enjoy it and we don't want to come back and do it again, but not getting so easy that it essentially doesn't do anything. Yeah. Speaking of in the park, I've obviously seen you in the park a number of times with your dog, who did just appear on the chair behind you a few minutes ago.
She's underneath the desk now.
Every time I see you, I'm like, look, Al's dog is half the age of my dog. I think when I first saw you in the park with her, you'd had her like 8 weeks, and she was already way better trained than my dog is. Disappointing.
Well, that surprises me, to be honest. I mean, I'd love having a dog, and it's one of those things. I've wanted a dog since I was a kid, and this opportunity was never going to come along again, where me and my wife were both at home with an opportunity to train the dog up, house train it, get it to a place where we could happily take it into the office and all that sort of stuff. So it was an opportunity that we took, and yeah, she absolutely enriches our lives and makes us go out. You know, the temptation particularly over the last few months, to just stay in the house and not go anywhere would have been massive had we not had a dog. You know, and there are times we have to crowbar the children out of the house to go for another blooming walk, but the dog makes you do it. And, you know, you go, well, we said you couldn't have a dog.
You wanted this dog.
Yeah, you wanted this dog, so you've got to walk it. And but no, she's brilliant. And, you know, again, it's one of those things that just helps you kind of lead a bit of a healthier lifestyle, just by getting out and about. And, you know, weirdly, you'll allow yourself to not do anything, but you won't not walk the dog. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? How we're kind of nicer to our animals than we are to ourselves sometimes. You know, like you never have a dog and never take it for a walk, but you'll happily never take yourself for one.
I think we don't like essentially letting down others. We don't like letting down our kids, our other halves, dogs, etc. But we're happy to let ourselves down on a several times a day basis, which is. We all do it. I do it. It's just an interesting way that the human brain works. And I think to tie into several things that you've said, finding a way to get clear on what you do value and how the process of getting fitter and healthier ties into that makes it a very different conversation in our heads. It's no longer something that you've said today, and I know you've said before, that you feel you ought to do, you need to do, you have to do. It's something you want to do because of how it helps you be better at those things that actually are important to you. That's always going to be the kids, and another stuff's always going to be more of a driver than a six-pack that we feel that maybe we should have, that really we don't care about all that much.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's one of those. It's a nice to have. If it comes along as part of it, then cool. But that's not the key thing. If somebody said to me, you can stay like big, like. I'd like to lose a bit more fat. I'm not like I'm nowhere near the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm good, I'm happy. I'd like to lose a bit more fat. But if somebody said to me, actually, you'll keep that fat, but you'll be 10 times fitter, I'd take that tomorrow, because that's the key thing really for me. I think you reach a point in your life where you realise you're not invincible anymore. You think actually this is, and I know you've had the same sort of thing. I'm 40 this year, and I think that's a moment in your life where you just take stock and go, oh, I can remember my parents being 40.
They felt really old, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. But
I had this similar conversation with Steve the other day on the podcast. 40, I think, is a big one, in that when you're in your 30s, even at 39, you can kind of feel you're still at the tail end of youth almost. When you're 40, you're not old, but you're definitely not young anymore. And I know, so let me think, one girl in my year died just after we left school, sadly. I know one person that died in the 20s, a few in the 30s. I could name off the top of my head 10, 15, maybe 20 people that died in the 40s. So straight away, you're like, right, I should be okay. Hopefully I've got 40 or 60 years in me, but it's starting to feel different. Yeah. And taking care of yourself like you are doing now and all that obviously makes it substantially more likely that that will all turn out well.
That's it, isn't it? You don't want that point to be something really bad.
Yeah.
You know, the last thing I'd want is to scare my children, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I don't want to get to, this was where I got to last year. I didn't want to get to the point where something big had to happen for me to do something. And I'm really glad I made that decision, because that would have been, I think at some point that would have happened, you know, something, whether it was like a funny turn or something really serious might have happened that would have scared me, but it would have scared the bejesus out of my kids. You know, that's where you don't want to get to. So I'm from my point of view, I'm just really glad I made the decision before that happened. So yeah, I've just got to make sure that this sort of attitude and mental kind of place that I'm in keeps going, because, you know, success, I do believe success with this will lead to success, because, you know, I have, as going back to what Faye said to me at the end of that 8 weeks, my habits have changed, my thoughts have changed, my whole sort of framework around who I am has changed. So yeah, I just need to make sure that I don't.
You will. You'll keep it going. I've had a number of people over the years say that they feel they need to hit rock bottom before they'll change. And I'm like, well, some people do that. And it's maybe this somewhat almost like glamorous way of seeing it that we see in films and all that. But you can just decide to start making changes now. It doesn't have to get to that point. Plenty of people like yourself and over the year, hundreds and hundreds of people that I've worked with and known have just decided one day, nowhere near rock bottom, but maybe getting a little bit too close in that direction, and just decided now's the time. We don't need to wait. We can change whenever we make that choice.
100%.
So how much weight have you lost in total
now? Last time I weighed in, I think I was at about 19.5 kilos.
So 44-ish pounds. So what's that? 3.5 stone-ish, roughly?
3.5 stone-ish.
Yeah, amazing.
So we'll see what happens. But to be totally honest, like you said, I think my metrics are probably going to change. I'm going to have to look a little bit deeper into those numbers to make sure that I'm still happy with progress, because I'm not going to lose weight at that same level. Which is good. You know, for me, the big thing for me was getting my body fat below 20%, which I just snuck into just before this lockdown, the last weigh-in. So I'm hoping that hasn't crept up, because I think it was like 19.9% or something. So I'm hoping that hasn't crept back over to 20% over lockdown. But yeah, I want to try and get, you know, there's those, I'm starting to have different targets really. So that was my next target. So I think what I'd like to do is see where I am when we weigh back in, and then set myself a new goal of maybe 15% body fat or something like that. And you know, hopefully the muscle mass will keep going up. But yeah, it's got to be on percentage rather than weight now, I think.
Sure. So that's pretty much up to date. Any last words of wisdom? Anything you'd share with people that are listening? I mean, that there was knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb, and
goodness, are they still listening after an hour and a quarter?
They will be. They will be. People love them. I think the great thing with the podcast as well is it's so easy to pause and come back to, isn't it? You know, especially if you've got it on your phone, it just stays in the notifications at the top. It's not like you have to block out an hour and a quarter to listen to it. You might listen to it on a number of car journeys, but there'll be people who really enjoyed this. Any final words of wisdom for them?
my big thing, and it's interesting, my wife is the CEO of her business, and so she gets asked to do quite a lot of interviews and stuff, and we were working through stuff the other day for something she'd been asked to do, and it really got me thinking about how I've kind of progressed through the journey. And I think for me, it's just do it and work out how to do it afterwards. I think, whatever it is, whether it's professional or personal, whether it's about your weight or whether it's about, giving something up or whatever, just do it and then worry about what happens afterwards. I think, a lot of people kind of think through the what's going to happen.
All the steps,
talk themselves out of things. And, for me, I just think jump in with both feet and work out how to do it afterwards, and
set sail and correct course as you go. Definitely.
Yeah, that's and it's something that I've only really learned over the last few years. I didn't realize how unhappy I was when I was just sort of teaching singing to one person at a time. They were coming in kind of on a conveyor belt, and I'd become very, very unhappy, and unhappiness leads to a lot of things. And I think, when I decided to do my degree through the Open University, and it's really interesting, you talk a lot about accountability and accountability partners. And I've gone off on a tangent here, but my dad at the time, I said, I'm going to do this degree through the Open University. And he went, okay. He said, I'll pay for it. And I was like, well, you don't have to pay for it. I'm going to pay for it. And he went, no, I'm going to pay for it. And what I realize now is that he was essentially going to hold me to account for it, because every Sunday I'd speak to my dad, and every Sunday he'd go, how's the course going? And, when, do you need any more money for the next module or whatever? And I'd be like, no, we're okay at the moment. And I'm not sure I'd have completed that degree if he hadn't done that. And, if I hadn't gone, okay, that gives me the permission, because I was thinking at the time, I'm not sure how I'm going to pay for it, but I've got to do it. And that was a massive turning point in my life towards realizing that you can do things if you just jump in and do them. And having him to kind of he wasn't nasty about it, but hold me to account and go, and I've said since, the thought of phoning him up and going, I've decided not to carry on with it, that was much more of a deterrent than any of the essays or late nights or any of the other crap that I had to go through to get that degree. It was, anyone that has done Open University or remote learning in that way, or night school or whatever it is, then you'll know how hard it is. But none of that compared with how hard it would have been to phone him up and look him in the eye and go, yeah, you've paid for half of it, but I've decided to stop it. And so, that's a big thing for me is having a bit of accountability and kind of saying to people, and I think it's James on the group put a post up the other day, and I thought that is awesome, that he went out on the group and he said, right, I don't know all of you, but my name's James. This is my plan. This is what I want to do. And I'm invested in that now. Right. And he's like, it's one of those things. He's got to look us all in the eye and go, I didn't make it. I didn't do it. And that's okay. But,
it's less likely now.
Yeah. The thought of that will be really tough for him. So he'll just have that extra little motivation. I thought that was awesome. So if you're listening, James, awesome job on that one.
I think finding a way to create accountability is key, and whether that be an accountability partner or something else, but some way so that it matters. If it doesn't really matter, if we don't do it, then we probably won't. And what your dad did there for you was create that, and it's creating a way that the pain of not doing it is greater than the pain of doing it.
Yeah,
you weren't going to not do it because actually that was more painful. And again, if whatever it is, losing weight, changing a relationship, getting a promotion at work, if all that happens is it just doesn't happen, we probably won't do it. If we find some way to create leverage, some way. I tell my kids stuff, or I announce it on Facebook, because I know that makes it 99% likely that I'm going to do it. I've got my singing in public thing still to do, which
how's that singing going, John?
Well, it's not going well, but I will do it. What I've told people I will do is sing on a live stream, and I know I will. Thankfully, having more lockdown to continue to push back the the time frame for that, and it might even be that by the time I finally do it, it's outside of lockdown, but I will do it. I haven't guaranteed that my singing will be good. I haven't guaranteed I'll put a certain amount of practice in. I'll just guarantee that I'll do it, and I know I will. And I know that when I tell the kids I'm going to do something, sometimes I regret it instantly. Sometimes I think, why the hell did I say that? But I know by doing that, it makes it infinitely more likely that I will.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right, guys, I'm sure everyone listens to that got loads from that. Loads. That was really good, Al. I hope you guys enjoyed it listening at home. And Al, thanks for your time.
No worries. Thanks very much, guys.